Hi, in this video I want to discuss a topic about life and purpose and meaning. Another pointless topic to talk and discuss about life and existence, because obviously life, other than the value that it has and the sentience, it shows its non-purposeness. And the difference and the distinction between value and purpose is the purpose has no purpose in the end other than to avoid negatives. And once all it is to avoid negatives, it automatically has no purpose. But the purpose and function and value doesn't mean that is to avoid negatives. And that's the thing that the value is created on. If there's no purpose, doesn't mean there's no value. The value just creates the non-purpose. The value is created based on a non-purpose. Therefore, the function of value and its creation is based on a non-purpose. It's based on no purpose other than the purpose of living to die. And that's the exact function of our existence, is we're living to die. And then obviously the function of our sexual organs are our purpose based on our existence, based on its self-perpetuation through a bunch of non-consensual existences, based on the non-consent of, say, a person being reproduced, is to reproduce and do the same thing and same function of avoiding negatives all over again. That's the point, is avoiding negatives creates the purposelessness of existence. And that's exactly the point that's being made, and the distinction between being made is the value and the purpose. And I guess this would be a video about distinction between value and purpose, because purpose is something that we don't really have other than, say, the purpose to an individual circumstance, or like perfect based on the circumstance or what exactly you're trying to achieve. Is a little more vague than, say, something like a purpose, because that's a more general subject as opposed to something that's precise, say something based on the definition of perfect. But purpose, the purpose of this discussion, you preface it with something like that, is to discuss philosophy and on the distinction between value and purpose. I can say there's a purpose, and the value in this is the value of the things that I'm applying based on the sentient beings that experience whatever kind of that apply this meaning to purpose, or whatever meaning or whatever purpose you want to apply, that use these kinds of words or use this kind of meaning, use these kinds of sentences to at least explain something. So yes, there is a distinction between purpose and value. The value is the sentient beings, and the purpose is not really anything except for, say, in a specific circumstance. The purpose of this video is to describe a distinction between purpose and value, I guess, more than anything. Um, Life is still pointless. It still has it has a purpose, but it's still pointless. But it has value. Life has a purpose, but life is pointless, but there's still value to this life game, because life relies on sentience, which has value based on the experience of the more or less pain that something may experience based on their value state of experience, experience either more positive or more negatives in the end, where they are based on the relative scale of what, compared to where they are now. Where can they be more or negative, or more negative, or more negative, or more positive, more less negative, or less negative. And the only time you're going to reach zero sum is obviously once you no longer exist. Death is the ultimate conclusion, the ultimate zero sum that we're trying to reach, and that's the only conclusion that's going to reach a zero sum game, is the reaching of a zero, which is death, like I mentioned. So that's the ultimate end game, and that's the only end game. Life is death. It's a death process. The older you get, you're dying. Every time from the time you're a baby, that's the moment you're conceived, you're ready to die. You're in the process of going uphill, then right back downhill. Because once you go uphill, there's only one way down, and there's only a down to go once you're all the way up the hill. You can, you're going to have a helicopter at the top of the hill? No, you're going to go up the hill. There's no helicopter. You're going to go right back down the hill. You're going to glide down the hill? No, you're going to roll down the hill like you came up it. But where there's an up, there's a down, and you're right in the process of dying right when you start going up. So life is the death game, and the death game is experiencing more or less relative to your current experience, a more positive or less negative or more negative experience. And that's the only game we're really playing. And that's what creates the pointlessness in the end. There's purpose to specific circumstance and existence. The purpose of this, the meaning of this, applied based on our own subjective evaluations and projections. Obviously, a projection would be more applied to not necessarily a purpose, but more to a meaning. And the meaning of this is more of a projection than, say, a purpose. At least there's some kind of at least intellectual background or setup when it comes to that kind of thing, especially when you're discussing a topic. So the purpose of this, to me, is to discuss this topic. And then you can come to a mutual understanding, and that can be more. And you can come to a mutual understanding to meaning as well. But generally speaking, purpose has a more objective foundation when it comes to that, because it relies more on a mutual understanding as opposed to your personal meaning and someone else's personal meaning. The purpose of this conversation we can understand is this over this, and then we can understand that at least as closely as we can reasonably understand between me and you, at least as an exchange of ideas. But it's still pointless. There's a purpose. There's not really a purpose, but there's purposes that we project, that we explain. Obviously, we can't explain, like I mentioned before, exactly, but we can explain just good enough. And it's pointless, regardless of the purposes that we apply to reality. There's really no purpose except the purposes that we give by our existence and the things that we predicate, say, a conversation on. The purpose of this action I do as a rationalization of many circumstances. But then again, obviously something like the idea of a purpose is abused in many circumstances, so it's just a word to use as in a rationalization or justification in many circumstances. But in the end, it really doesn't have a purpose beyond avoiding the negative. That's the real purpose. If you want to apply it to a life, is to avoid greater negative, prevent greater negative. Avoid, prevent is the greatest thing, or to avoid or prevent. That's the basic idea in the end, is to avoid or prevent more pain, more negative experience, and to try to maintain a positive experience as much as you can. So the point and the purpose, and there's value. Obviously, the value is based on the purpose that life gives itself, and whatever purpose we may apply to some kind of existence that we're experiencing. So that's the main purpose of existence, and but it's still pointless because that's all we're doing. The value gives us the purpose, but the purpose is still pointless because it's a zero-sum game in the end. Regardless of whatever evaluations and projections we want to apply, we can apply it like perfect to a specific circumstance, but from our own point of view, those words have very little foundation beyond the meaning and definition that we can apply to them. And that's where the mutual understanding and portrayal and exchange of ideas comes from. A mutual understanding of certain ideas relies on that. And that's where most of the words that we apply objective meanings to come from, as a subjective, or not really subjective, but a mutual understanding of a basic idea, its function of the idea, as opposed to what we're necessarily using as a context or where we're going with the idea. The definition is there, and it's, say, objectively written in some kind of dictionary where we can go back and refer to it. And it doesn't really matter. Those words are there objectively as a definition in, say, a dictionary. But in many cases, they're objectively defined, and they go through a subjective circumstance, say through a human brain, to, say, misconstrue something to a person's own end, more than anything. So ultimately, life has value, and the value creates the purpose, but the purpose is pointless because it's a zero-sum game in the end, and then it's all about avoiding negatives and parasiting off of each other and so on and so forth. So that's the basic idea in the end. Doesn't really serve any function, really. It's just the same old crap, just another same old shit, just another day. So yeah, it's the same basic idea, generally speaking. So is there anything else I want to mention? Yeah, so you keep on doing the same old redundant process until you die, like I mentioned before, and that's really the whole game that we're playing. So I don't really think I have anything else to mention on this subject. So yeah, if I have anything else to mention, I may have missed something, or I was going in a direction that I forgot where I was going, so and I changed the subject. But anyway, that's all I really want to mention. So if I have anything else to say on the subject, I can always mention in another video next time, or whenever I decide to make one. So I guess that's it about value and purpose and point to life and existence. So thank you, and until next time. Bye.